Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So it's September 6th, yeah? 2021 in Hillsborough, North Carolina. And we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 28, verse 13. Janovai loka etasmin avidya kama karma bhi uchavachashu gatishu Naveda swam gatim brahman. Janaha, people, vai, certainly, loke, in the world, etasmin, this, avidya, without knowledge, kama, because of desires, karma bhi, by activities, ucha, among superior, avachashu, and inferior, gatishu, destinations, na veda, does not recognize, swam, his own, gatim, destination, Brahman, wandering. It's a very interesting verse. As people in the world are wandering higher and lower, they don't recognize their own home. They don't recognize where they're supposed to be going. What's that verse that Lord Chaitanya said about wandering? Brahmanya bharate kwan bhagavan jeev Guru Krishna prasadi. So we have this Brahman, again, this wandering, right? Brahmanda, throughout the universes, they're wandering. Brahmanya bharate. BBT translation, Lord Krishna thought, certainly, now this is a response to the residents of Vrindavan thinking, are we going back to Godhead? What's our destination? Certainly people in this world are wandering among higher and lower destinations, which they achieve through activities performed according to their desires and without full knowledge. Thus, people do not know their real destination. So there's a very long BBT purport that's based pretty much entirely on Jiva Goswami. It's credited to Jiva Goswami. It's also based very much on Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. With the permission of Maharaj Indrista and Krishna Priya, I'm not going to read that purport. I'm going to go instead to Sanatana Goswami's Tika. Basically, the BBT purport in Jiva Goswami and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur concentrate on the difference between ordinary people and the residents of Vrindavan, with talking about how Krishna is saying this, apparently speaking about the residents of Vrindavan, but the residents of Vrindavan are in a different category. We might also want to point out that in the BBT purport, there's a firm distinction between Yogamaya and Mahamaya, but our devotee Gopal Hari, Radhika Raman's brother, did his PhD research on the use of Maya, the word Maya, and the meaning of Maya in the Shastra and in the Bhagavatam. And this line between how the word Yogamaya is used and the word Mahamaya or Maya is used does not exist. So our saying this is Mahamaya and this is Yogamaya we do it as a kind of an ISKCONism, but it's not Shastra. Just Yogamaya literally means magical powers achieved through the process of yoga. That's the literal meaning of it. Anyway, just a little aside. Fascinating book, by the way, of his. So Sanatana Goswami's commentary is Tika. All people, now this is really interesting because Sanatana Goswami is going to use a lot of hermeneutics here to analyze the different ways that this verse can be understood. And he's going to look at two main ways, which are certainly complementary, but they're not the same. So this is his first. All people, Janaha, wander in this material world. Vai indicates that it is well known. The meaning is this: other persons do not at all know their real goal. This means the best of yogis and jnanis. So his first explanation is that what Krishna is saying is nobody in the world, it's well known that no one in the world, even the best of yogis and jnanis, know where they're supposed to go. Okay, going on with Sanatana Goswami. But more than the inhabitants of Vaikuntha, I cannot give up my eternal devotees who cannot bear separation from me for even a moment. They are complete in their goal. So they are complete in their goal. He's saying they already know their goal. I must fulfill their desire, though it arises out of curiosity or out of prema. So this is also very interesting, that here Sanatana Goswami is saying that what Krishna is thinking is it's not that my devotees here in Vraja are acting out of avidya. What's motivating them is either curiosity or prema, or presumably some combination. Now he's giving another way of understanding this verse, which is quite different from his first way. So going on, he says, or my servants, Janaha, or cowherds, wander about in pastimes. So instead of wandering around due to their karma and their ignorance, they're wandering around in pastimes with me, higher or lower in the wave of prema. So instead of meaning they're going to heavenly planets, they're going to hellish planets, it means with different emotions in prema, in different pastimes they're wandering. Performing activities of service, karma bihi. So here he's using the word, Sanatana Goswami's understanding karma to mean activities of service rather than fruit of activities. Going on, with desires centered on me, kama. So here he's understanding kama to mean desires to please Krishna, which of course Rupa Goswami also describes a particular bhav, sai bhav, as being based on kama or desire. And knowledge of bhakti, vidya. So here he's turning it from avidya to vidya with using Sanskrit sandhi. Always existing with me, they know Vaikuntha and Atma with a double negative of na. So, right, I've never done nothing means I've done something. So by using it as a double negative, you say they already know Vaikuntha, they already know Atma. I will fulfill the desires of my dear devotees, since that desire includes everything dear to me in terms of knowing and the object of their knowledge. So I thought this was a particularly interesting and sweet. I mean, any verse of the Bhagavatam, my own personal conviction is any verse of the Bhagavatam, you can give 200 to 300 different classes on it, at least. You know, what you're going to focus on, what Prabhupada says, many angles of vision, right? When I teach people how to give classes, I always say, find one main principle. And sometimes people, how can I find one? I said, look, there's at least 200 there that you can find. So again, the verse, Janovai loka etasmin avidya kama karma bihi, ucha vachasu gatishu na veda swam gatim brahman. Lord Krishna thought, certainly people in this world are wandering among higher and lower destinations, which they achieve through activities performed according to their desires and without full knowledge. Thus people do not know their real destination. It's interesting, I'm watching very slowly, little by little, a video of Srila Prabhupada at the 1975 Rath Yatra, and I must confess I'm watching because I'm hoping I'm going to find me somewhere in the video. I'm like, where am I in the video? I have found a lot of my friends in watching it. But as I was watching this, I'm at the point now where Prabhupada's giving the class, and he was talking about this in the class. And it was really funny as I was watching Prabhupada give this class. I felt like I was enthused to join the Krishna consciousness movement all over again. Right? Whenever we hear this philosophy, it's like, yes, that just makes so much sense. That's what I want. It's what I want to dedicate myself to. So we see this. People are wandering higher and lower, trying to find something that they never find. Right? This is what we see. Right? Everywhere. Let me try this. Let me try that. Let me try this. Let me try that. I'll make a lot of money. No, I'll give up all my money to charity and live like a poor person. I'll try this career. No, I'll try that career. No, I'll try this other career. And nowadays it's, I'll try this spouse, and then I'll try that spouse, and then I'll try the other spouse. And, I'll try a spouse of the other gender. I'll try a spouse of both genders mixed together. I'll, whatever. They're constantly, I'll be an animal. I'll be a demigod. I'll live in this country. I'll live in that country. And all of us in our own little way try this kind of thing. I'll get this piece of furniture, or I'll eat this kind of food, or I'll wear this kind of clothing, or right? We're constantly, isn't it? Even if it's very small adjustments, I'll change my schedule a little bit. I'll change my diet. I'll get a different herb that I'll take for my health, or I won't work with this person anymore. Instead, I'll work with this person. And we keep thinking, if I do this, I'll be happy. Does it work? Does it work? Is there any material adjustment we've been able to make in our life that gives us the kind of happiness that we want? It just doesn't work. Well, when I get this new computer, like I've got a new computer coming in the mail now from China, and I'm like, wow, I'm going to get a new computer. Then I'll be happy. But I've gotten new computers before, and they make you happy for a little while, isn't it? Right? You have an unworn out keyboard. And then after a while, it's just your computer. Actually, Brajabihari Prabhu was once talking about this, how the studies have shown that people who come into a lot of money, they inherit a lot of money or they win the lottery. So at first they're so happy, and within 6 months, they're right back to however happy they were, whatever level of happiness they were before they won the lottery. And that works with catastrophic things too. Someone will get in an accident and become paralyzed, and they're in a wheelchair, and their life is finished, and they're depressed, and within about 6 months, they're back to the same level of happiness as they were before the accident. I mean, so we're trying, we're really trying. Prabhupada was talking about this in this class also, that according to our desires, and we have actions based on our desires. I'm thinking, if I could just get that, or be that, or go there, then I would be happy. And therefore we engage in activities to be that, or go there, or get that. And then when we get there, we're like, no. Or we're like, yes, no. And we think, oh, I just picked the wrong material combination, isn't it? I just got to work for a different company, or I got to get a different pair of shoes, or I have and each time we just think, I'm going to get it right next time. I'm going to get it right next time. The class I'm scheduled to give on Wednesday is about, it's the story of Puranjana. And it's funny, it's also a chapter 28. And it's a different canto, but it's practically the same chapter and verse. So there Puranjana is leaving his body, this metaphorical person, every man. He's leaving his body, and he's leaving his body worrying about his family and thinking, I didn't enjoy enough. And so what's going to happen? Then he's going to get another embodied to try again, right? And Prabhupada's commenting, even at the end of life, we still have material desires. It's not like you're going to get old and the body's not so good at fulfilling your desires anymore, and therefore you won't have the desires anymore. It's not the case. You still have the desires. Your body just can't do anything about them. And so then you go to another body. And this is how most of us die. Most of us die with some unfulfilled desires, or some frustrated desires. And Krishna says, okay, you can try again. And we don't know what is our real goal. And we find when we try to tell this to people, they're very resistant. We try to tell people, your real goal is spiritual. So people in general they're not interested in hearing that. And this is true whether they're a karmi, a jnani, or a yogi. What I've been speaking about so far are basically the karmis and vikarmis. Nowadays, most of them are vikarmis. But then the karmis are the really pious people, generally religious people, and they're thinking, I'm going to wander through the universe and get what I want by the grace of God. I'm going to be a pious person, and that way I'll conquer, the vikarmis are, I'm going to conquer material energies by being impious. The karmis are, I'm going to conquer the material energies by being pious. The jnanis are, I'm going to conquer the material energy by being detached. And the yogis are, I'm going to conquer the material energy through subtle power. But none of them really know where to go. And everybody becomes frustrated. You know, everybody's frustrated. Or if we think, I'm going to get a new leader, you know, I mean, it's nice not to have the crazy man blubbering on the news all the time. But it's not that our present leader is like leading us to great peace and prosperity either. I mean, it's always like that, isn't it? Or a new form of government. We're going to get communism and then everybody will be happy. It doesn't work. So here, these residents of Vrindavan, they're already complete. They already know. They're not in any of these categories. They're not foolish people. Not only do they already know the goal, they've already achieved the goal. There they are with Krishna in Boma Vrindavan. They're already in the topmost place. They don't have any of these problems. I mean, in Boma Vrindavan, you do have devotees who are at various levels of advancement. So you do have devotees in Boma Vrindavan who have not yet achieved full Krishna consciousness without any anarthas. And this chapter in Krishna book is where Srila Prabhupada talks about how, where in this life, if we come to Krishna consciousness, we join Krishna's leelas in the material world. He says for further training, and then we join the pastimes within the spiritual world. Now, of course, when Krishna comes to the material world, he brings some of his Nityasiddha devotees with him. They are expanding. It's not like the spiritual world's empty while they're traveling around the material world. Although it's interesting, in Srimad Bhagavatam, there's some talk like that. But they're able to expand. Just like also in Srimad Bhagavatam, Gopakumar asked Narada Muni, how do I see you everywhere? He says, because I can expand myself. So some of Krishna's eternal associates, like Nanda, Yasoda, etc., Sridham, Subal, they're traveling with Krishna through the material worlds, but they're also picking up the sadhana siddha devotees and the kripa siddha devotees who are joining Krishna's pastimes, like the sages who were with Lord Ramachandra, the personified Vedas who become gopis. And also there are persons who are becoming Krishna conscious in those leelas and are not yet at their eternal swarup. Like we read about the wives of the Brahmanas, who after meeting Krishna wanted to become gopis. But in that time they weren't. Only one of them was able to transition in that particular time. Or Rupa Goswami talks about in Mathura and Dwarka that the wives of the Kurus and the Yadus, that many of them thought, oh, I want to be Krishna's queen. But of course that wasn't going to happen at that manifestation. And then there are all kinds of persons in Krishna's pastimes who are not even that advanced at all. You know, those who maybe see him as he walks down the street in Mathura and become attracted. And of course there are even demons in Krishna's Bhoma Leela. I mean, out and out demons. But many of them become purified. I mean, one of the most interesting to me is Pandraka, who pretends to be Lord Vishnu by 2 artificial arms. It's like, really? You know, like, seriously? You really think you become... Well, I hope it didn't look like the artificial arms in the Indian movies. You know, the tinfoil crown and like that. But he ended up getting Swarupya Mukti, because he was always meditating on this form. Anyway, so in Boma Vrindavan, when Krishna has his pastimes, there are devotees at many, many stages of advancement. It's interesting in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and one of the things that's been really most interesting to me in studying the Southern Ocean is where Rupa Goswami is talking about what stimulates ecstatic love for Krishna among the pure devotees, among the siddha devotees, whether they're sadhana siddha, kripa siddha, or nitya siddha. And one of the things that is a stimulant, technically it's a vibhava, alambana, ashraya, the shelter of love, are sadhakas, are practicing devotees. Rupa Goswami specifically says practicing devotees who are not yet free of anarthas. Srila Prabhupada translates this as who are not yet free of the material impasse. The literal translation is who can see Krishna directly, and Srila Prabhupada translates that as who are eligible to enter the kingdom of God. Rupa Goswami then quotes from the 11th canto about the Majjhima devotee, one who's trying to love God, who makes friendship with the devotees, who is kind to the innocent and avoids the atheists. So this Majjhima devotee, who still has an artist, who's not free of the material impasse, but who is eligible to enter the kingdom of God, acts as a stimulus for ecstatic love for the pure devotees. So what does this mean, who's eligible to enter the kingdom of God, if they still have an artist? Prabhupada would say all of the time, unless you are like fire, you cannot enter into fire. Unless you're completely pure, you cannot enter into the spiritual world. And so this means the devotees who can go into Krishna's Bhoma Lila for further training. Just like we see some of the gopis when Krishna is playing his flute for the Ras Lila, some of them they actually can't externally get free of the restraints of their family members, isn't it? So the family members are trying to restrain all the gopis. Most of them are able to leave anyway. Like so many of us who came to the Krishna consciousness movement did so, although our family members objected. But some of the gopis, they weren't able to leave. Why? Our acharyas explain, Srila Prabhupada explains, because they still had some anartas that needed to be purified in separation and through association with the Nityasiddha gopis. So these sadhana siddha gopis, or those in some level of advancement by the sangha of the Nityasiddha devotees. And we see this happen with the wives of the brahmanas. They got association with the Nityasiddhas through the flower sellers, and therefore they came to this point. So it's natural that these devotees, that some of them may be curious, because here's Sanatana Goswami saying, out of curiosity or out of prema. So we can imagine that some of these devotees would be curious, right? Just like I would assume that most of us are curious. Am I really going to go back to Godhead? I mean, like, really? I look in my heart and I'm like, it doesn't look like it. Right? Or my behavior, I just got another letter from a devotee that I offended him, and it's like, oh, sheesh, Can I go one day without offending anybody? Is it possible? I don't know. Maybe today I won't offend any devotees. So we look at this and we just think, am I actually, is it possible? Is it possible that I can actually go and be with Krishna? Is that possible? So even these devotees who were there with Krishna in his Bhoma Lila are thinking, oh, after Nanda Maharaj gets captured by Varuna and they hear about Varuna offering respects to Krishna, it's like, oh, Krishna, oh, wow. Maybe where I am is in the pastimes of the Lord, and hey, I'm actually here in Krishna's material world pastimes. Maybe I'm going to go to his abode. Is it possible for me? Is it possible? Rupa Goswami talks about this hope against hope. And Rupa Goswami says some heavy things about himself. He says, I've never done any sadhana. An interesting statement, isn't it? I've never done any sadhana. I've never done any service. I've nothing auspicious about my life. Right? When I read that, I'm like, sheesh, if Rupa Goswami says that, what am I going to say? We have, Rupa's writing, Radharani saying, there's so much nectar in these two syllables, Krishna. I want millions of ears and millions of tongues. And I'm thinking, I just want to finish my rounds. So I've never chanted the name of Krishna. Never. Millions of ears. Prithu Maharaj is asking for this. Can I have million? Krishna says, what do you want? I want millions of ears. And I read this and I think, I've never once chanted the name of the Lord. I've never once actually done any service. I've never ever served a devotee. Everything is nasty. And then Rupa's saying still, but I have a hope that you're merciful. So these residents are having a hope. Curiosity, is it possible? So Krishna wants to reciprocate with this and says, yes, now you're actually going home. You're not going to wander anymore. You're actually going home. You're my people. And for the other devotees, it's out of prema. It's not out of curiosity. Prabhupada clearly speaking about, it's funny, Prabhupada says different things about himself at different times. Sometimes Prabhupada said that we have no hope for going back to Godhead for the coming crores of our lifetimes, but we hope we can do some service. And other times he said the devotee is fearless because he knows he's going back to home, back to Godhead. So it's kind of interesting how he positions himself different times that he's in different moods, which we'll get to in a moment. So the Nityasiddha devotees, they're already, there's complete certainty for them. It's where they are. But it's out of love. Can we see assurance of our eternal home? I mean, in one sense, there's no difference between the Vrindavan and the spiritual world and Boma Vrindavan. Like Gopal Kumar says, when he goes back and forth, he only notices the difference in the travel. Oh, I'm going here, I'm going there. But in another sense, there is a difference. There's hints of demons in the spiritual world, but there aren't any actual demons. And the so-called demons like Kaliya just give the Lord a ride on the Jamuna, and Keshi gives the Lord a ride around Vrindavana. There's not actually anybody inimical. So there are some differences. There's no one there who still needs to be purified, although Krishna consciousness is dynamic. And so the Nityasiddha devotees, just out of love, it's one of the symptoms of love that they're attached to Krishna's abode. It's actually one of the anubhavs, and one of the voluntary expressions of emotion of those who've attained just the stage of bhava in terms of shraddha to prema, is this great attachment for the Lord's abode. I mean, most of us feel that way about our material home, isn't it? Right? Wherever we live, if we're traveling for a while and then, I'm home. Or where we were born. I mean, when I go to New York, I'm like, yeah, I'm in New York, I'm home. I feel it a little bit when I'm in London. A little similar flavor. Huh? Or some places associated with a particular person that we're attached to. Oh, this is where my husband was born. This is his childhood home. Or this is where my child was born. Or this is where my parents were born. So the devotees, they love Vrindavan. Therefore, out of love, out of prema, they want to see the eternal abode. So Krishna is fulfilling that desire. So then at the end of his Tika, Sanatana Goswami is giving this very different meaning. Because everything that exists materially is a reflection of what exists spiritually. As above, so below. Whatever we find here has some pure eternal archetype of which this is some sort of a shadowy reflection. So there is a wandering due to desire and activities of those who are Nityasiddha devotees in the spiritual world. And that is a wandering through various moods of prema. So in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu Southern Ocean, so I keep referring to this all the time, but it's kind of what I'm absorbed in right now. So in order to have rasa, in order to have taste, there has to be a combination of ingredients. So you start with the devotee's basic relationship. Let's take a basic relationship of Sakya, friendship. So like Sridham and Subal, Madhumangal. So that's a particular flavor. Yes, all of us know that flavor of friendship. I hope everybody here has a friend. Yeah? Or I hope you've had a friend. We have some idea what friendship is. It's a feeling. It's an experiential feeling, friendship. Then there may be some other primary staibhavs that help. So some people are like friends with some servitude mixed with it. Or some are friends with some parental mixed with it. If they're younger friends, they're friends with the idea of service. If they're older friends, they're friends with the idea of care. And there's different degrees of intimacy among Krishna's friends. So they have that feeling. And then there are the secondary staibhavs, like comedy. So which of Krishna's friend is very involved with this comedy? Madhumangal. So the secondary basic relationship of comedy is very prominent in the friendship of Madhumangal. And sometimes it's fear. Oh, Bakasura is going to swallow Krishna. And these secondary staibhavs, these secondary basic relationships, they come and go, and sometimes they become so dominant that they temporarily overshadow the basic relationship. So sometimes the feeling of comedy is so, you're with your friend and you're so much into comedy that your basic relationship becomes one of comedy rather than friendship. The comedy kind of overpowers the friendship temporarily. Or fear, or anger, or wonder. You climb to the top of a mountain with your friend and you're looking at the view, and the feeling of wonder, or the feeling of wonder that your friend's doing something amazing, it kind of overshadows the friendship for a moment. So that's kind of a wave, and these secondary staibhavs leave impressions. Materially, we have impressions. You know, we have our samskars, we have impressions, how our parents treated us, where we grew up, what kind of food we like to eat. Like, I used to be served kasha by this aunt and uncle that I didn't like, and so now when I smell it, I'm like, get it away from me. And Marish is eating it every day. So we have these different samskars materially, but spiritually, these secondary staibhavs, they leave permanent, that's why they're called stai, they leave permanent impressions. And then there's the vyavichari bhavs, which are like, Rupa Goswami explains, they're like waves. And we're talking about going on a higher or lower. So these are various emotions. Rupa lists 33 emotions that come as a wave on the devotee. Maybe it's disappointment. Oh, I can't find Krishna in the forest right now. And they're feeling disappointment and they're feeling despair. And then they hear Krishna's flute, and then the despair and disappointment recedes, and joy comes in a wave. And those don't leave permanent impressions. They come and they go. The waves that come out of the ocean and go back into the ocean. And these emotions have emotions within them, just like materially, very angry people, thank you, Prabhu, very angry people can have their anger stemming from fear. Isn't that often the case? People get afraid, and then they cover their fear with anger. Yes? Or people are ashamed. They're embarrassed, they're ashamed, and then their shame gets covered with fear. And so we have these kind of, I think of it like one of those Russian nesting dolls. You know, a lot of our emotions, they have another emotion under it, and then they have another emotion under that. And so spiritually, emotions are also like that. One emotion causes one emotion, which then causes another emotion. And there are all these different waves. And so the devotees in prema, they're moving on these waves of ecstasy. That's how they're traveling. It's not that Krishna consciousness is bland. It's not that, well, once I achieve my destination, you know, then I'm there. And then that's kind of it. No, there's a constant traveling on these waves, and they also travel with the Lord, like they're traveling with the Lord in his material pastimes in the material world. They're traveling with the Lord in his pastimes in the spiritual world. And there's a unity of desires. Like here it's explained, Krishna is saying, my desire is to serve my devotees, and the devotee's desire is to serve him. So this is our choice about wandering. I mean, if we don't want to wander at all, then we can go to the Brahmajyoti and just be here now. Just static. But otherwise, we can choose to wander in this world without ever going home. Maybe it's here, maybe it's there, maybe it's here, maybe it's there, being disappointed again and again and again. Or we can wander with the Lord in these waves of ecstasy, in these waves of prema, in these waves of spiritual emotion, where we're constantly having taste. So questions, comments, additions, subtractions, chastisements. Oh no, then it's going to be really bad. Then that means it's a correction he doesn't want to embarrass me with in front of everybody else. So he'll write me later about how wrong I am. That's all right. Anybody else? Comments, thoughts? Yes. Like the Yajna. I don't know how they got there. Kaliya's wives wonder about that. They wonder about how Kaliya got there. Of course, there is a back history that we can find out how we got there. But they are wondering that. They're saying, wait a minute. How are you getting the touch of Krishna's feet and you're also a snake? How do you put that together? What are you doing here? Yeah, there's this funny mixture. So I'm sure, like we know Kaliya's backstory or we know Putana's backstory. We don't know everybody's backstory. I'm thinking about the Yajnik Brahmanas. They're there. Not that they're not there. They're there. And they have a chance. They could have just walked a little. The Brahmanas' wives didn't walk too far, I don't think. They could have done that. They didn't. And so you have all varieties of people there when the Lord appears who have a chance. And why are they getting that chance? I'm sure each of them has their own story from this life or from previous lives. But definitely when Krishna appears, there's all kinds of living entities who get an opportunity. I mean, that's true now, isn't it? We go out in the street and take the holy name and take prasadam to people. Yes. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.